Hello, hola, I'm Michele Bayona. I'm here to spend some time with you. Welcome to my studio. I've set up a camera on my working space, and first I would like to introduce myself. I'm Michele Bayona. I'm Italian. I was born in Vicenza, Veneto, Italy. And I'm a figurative uh, artist, contemporary, of course, because we live, our times. But I do dedicate my art, especially focusing on the realistic approach. And I like to portray what I see. I'm inspired by nature, and I like to see, things and put them back onto my paper, right? So watercolor has become my favorite medium because of spontaneities, the spontaneity, and also the easy way to communicate something in a direct way, And also, it's much faster as a technique compared to oil. I also do paint with oils quite a lot. So actually, this past month I've been painting with oils. So I haven't been doing much watercolors lately, but I'm sure we can play together. I paint along. Nothing has to be perfect, so relax and just enjoy the process. When we enjoy the process, we get good results. Hopefully, I will enjoy the process in front of so many people. Although it's a virtual experience, but I know the pressure is on. But anyway, I would like to start. Tal vez lo voy a decir eso también en español, porque, bueno, me gustaría como generar un evento un poco más, pues que pueda embarazar más personas, ¿no? Puede ser más global. Y pues yo soy Michele Bayona, soy artista figurativo y me gusta pintar la naturaleza, capturar en el papel lo que veo. Y entonces mucho de mi trabajo es en la observación, mucho de mi trabajo también como estudiante, porque tampoco soy solamente profesor, ¿no? Yo sigo aprendiendo de los grandes maestros y entonces pues es aprender a ver y ha sido mi enfoque en los últimos años, lo que ha generado un arte más realista de lo que era antiguamente. Mi forma de expresión era pues artística, era más expresiva y ahora es un poco más realista, pero por ahí va. Hay que jugar este equilibrio. Obviamente lo que estoy diciendo en español no tiene nada que ver con lo que dije en inglés, pero bueno, pues así es una charla, entonces voy un poco improvisando. Me gustaría empezar enseñando un poquito de mi trabajo. Ustedes ya lo vieron en la sigla muy bonita, Felicidad Doméstica, para organizar este encuentro de forma tan profesional. Y le voy a enseñar un poquito de mi trabajo, que lo tengo aquí en la vista, que va a ser la vista en la que vamos a trabajar. So I'm going to show you some of my work. This is just a few more images of what you already saw in the. Here's my coffee as well, by the way, because here is 11 o'clock. We are in Mexico City. This is where I live. So you saw a lot of images in the beginning while we were all waiting to start, and this is just to show you more or less also the size of it. I actually only showing the small ones. This is sort of pretty much a quarter sheet, and I also have some work which is like half the size. And this is a sketch of Venice, because I like to paint landscapes as well. Most of what you see in Domestica are images that are related to the workshop that I give there. The Domestica course on portrait. So this is also to show you that there are different phases while we paint a portrait. And we use tonal values, which is a concept that if you're familiar with it, you understand how important it is. And le puedes poner más cálido un poquito. And this is sort of a mid-stage, right? So of a portrait. This is almost completed. It's missing an eye. Sometimes you don't have to portrait the entire face, right? Some indication could be enough. This is much more complete, and this is from Photo Reference, a wonderful picture of a lady. Works very well. And here, you see, the sphere. This is very important, and the gradient washes and all that. You can find that in my course, of course. And this is also a very nice image. I go really fast so that you can see them. It's pretty much it. All right. So I think we're ready to start. I was watching this in the small screen, so I hope it's still okay. You can see it big now. But I have some problems with the light, so I need to check it out. ¿Le puedes poner más cálido? Más cálido. Y más potente. Más potente. Okay. Yeah. All right, so we're ready to start. First of all, we need to talk about the eye. The eye is a fundamental part of a portrait, right? So some people call it the window of the soul, meaning that the eye is a feature of the face that really helps communicating the personality of the person, the subject that we paint. Okay, so when we want to make a portrait, why do we make a portrait to begin with? No, we make a portrait in order to capture something of the person that it's in front of us. Some people might just be happy with some resemblance, or a vague resemblance, but it's not just important to paint a portrait in a very realistic way. It's also important to express what the person has within. And this is really important, and I think we can achieve that in two different ways. First of all, technically, we can get closer to a resemblance. Resemblance means getting really the right features in the right place. The second is talking with the person, is having a conversation, getting to know the person better, and that's why the most successful portraits are basically the portraits I did of people I know. And that way, even if I think I know these people, right, and if I know the person, during the session itself, I can have conversation with them, and this conversation can actually open up a complete different aspect of the personality of the subject that I'm painting. So either or, always try not to paint from images, reference images. Try to paint with a live model. So this could be yourself in a mirror. This could be someone you know, and someone who's actually in your family and can pose for you without a problem. These kind of things really help getting a much better portrait. Today we focus on the eye being a very important feature of the face, and I'll show you pretty much how I normally do it. This is what I teach to my students all the time. A lesson, or I think 2 lessons in the Domestika course are dedicated to this. And this is actually the last exercise we do before we start with the final project being the portrait, and the final project being a portrait with a model, being a friend or a lot of the students I see, they're using the reference image that I put on the course, which is fine too. But there's a difference between painting from a picture and painting from life. So I really wish, in a way, that everybody will try at least once to do that, because I know a lot of people paint from pictures, but really it is such a great experience to paint from life. So you should try at least once. And I think if you try once, then you don't stop. Hopefully. This is my cappuccino here. So, to begin with, I will talk very briefly about materials. The most important material being the paper. Paper is definitely the most important feature, element of our technique. And then comes the colors, Here we're going to use colors, and we're going to use ochre, which is here. We're going to use some brown, in this case is Van Dyke brown, maybe some sepia, and definitely I think we're going to use some, what's this name? Some sienna tostada, some burnt sienna, right? And maybe a few of the blues we're going to see. I hope you can see both, the picture and where I mix the colors. Here are my brushes. You don't see them, but they're right here, over here. We're going to only use 2 or 3, probably the small one, which is a liner or a ridge. This is very useful for the first part of the exercise, which will be just to put on paper what we see in terms of construction lines. And then we can go to a medium size, or maybe a little bigger. You can go to this, either one of those, right? And a mop, we're going to use also a mop. Entonces, lo que vamos a usar como materiales, bueno, el papel es un papel grano fino de 300 gramos de la marca Arches. So this is a paper from Arch. It's 300 grams, and it's a quarter of the imperial sheet, right? Este es un cuarto de tamaño imperial. El tamaño imperial es 56 por 76, la hoja, and so 56 by 76 centimeters. And then we're going to use, a small brush, a medium brush, and a mop. I know there are going to be a lot of questions about materials, but materials is really not what this is about. What this is about is to paint the eye. And so I will try to answer to the materials later. I hope you have at least one color, which is plenty to start practicing with me and paint along. And, at least one brush. Then comes the first phase. When I start with a white canvas, that, white piece of paper, what I like to do is to start with the main axis of the eye, in this case. If it was to be a head, well, it will be the main axis of the head. I'm going to use ochre because maybe for the video, ochre is not going to be that easy, Yo sé que todo el mundo me quiere escuchar en español porque hay más público en español, pero pues me han pedido de hacerlo en inglés. Entonces, esa clase va a ser ambos. Entonces, lo que voy a hacer es hablarlo primero en inglés y después pasar al español. Tienen que entender también que para mí pintar y hablar dos idiomas al mismo tiempo, considerado que yo soy italiano, pues también es un poco complicado. So I was saying that it's a little difficult for me to speak Spanish and English at the same time, considering I'm Italian. And, also I hope there's some Italian following me right now. Un saluto a tutti, spero che vi piaccia l'esercizio che faremo oggi, quello sull'occhio, e che possiate dipingere con me. I can't speak Italian anymore. I don't speak any language, basically. So what we do is to put on paper first the vertical axis. I think I'm gonna choose, the center of the paper, and I'm gonna just put a vertical line, very thin line. You probably almost don't even see it, but be patient, because this is just a construction line. And so construction lines are very light, and then we put a horizontal line, just like this, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, just, put something on paper. This will work for sure. And then we'll start creating the shape of the eye. This is what I like to call gesture. So, al principio ponemos una línea vertical y una línea horizontal. Eso porque también nos ayuda como a romper un poco el hielo, ¿no? O sea, tenemos una hoja en blanco y un ojo que tenemos que pintar. Entonces, el pánico puede ser total. Para empezar con algo, yo siempre recomiendo empezar con estos dos ejes, porque nos ayudan un poco a poner todo lo que vemos en la realidad, ponerlo en el papel. Entonces, en relación a estos elementos que hemos puesto en el papel, pues podemos empezar con lo que yo llamo el gesto, que es la primera fase en la que voy viendo un poco la construcción de las líneas. Como pueden ver, yo no utilizo lápiz y les recomiendo empezar a hacerlo como yo. O sea, no hace falta poner otro medio en lo que ya estamos usando, que es la acuarela. So I'm not using any pencil drawing first. I draw directly with watercolor. This is what I recommend. It's true that the lines will eventually fade, but this gives me a lot of spontaneities and freshness in my drawing, right? And then the painting, but my drawing will be a painting. So I draw as I paint. We're drawing with a brush. We're not trying to separate the two faces. It's all the same. So if I use a different tool, such a pencil, I'm basically blocking myself from, and then what happens then? I just use a watercolor just to fill in the shapes. And what's the purpose of that? If we paint with watercolor, we need to paint, and it's not about filling shapes. It's about finding the shapes. It's a completely different approach, probably, to what you've been told before. But it's really what gets you to this kind of results, because it's really entering the form, and the shape. Let's talk about the form and the shape. Here we have, skull, which is where the eye is placed, right? So the eye being a ball, it's just like this sphere. So the eyeball, the name itself says that, it's a ball, it's a sphere. So what we need to do is to represent the sphere that is inside this eye socket, right? So this sphere has some muscles on the sides, which is the upper lid and the lower lid, right? The upper eyelid and the lower eyelid being the muscles that keep this sphere in place, all right? So this is really important as a concept. We're starting with this void, and within this void, we have a ball, right? That's the most important concept when we paint an eye. So, el concepto más importante Uy, creo que voy un poco lento, por eso también el traducirlo todo, pero el concepto más importante es que estamos creando una forma y esa forma es lo que está dentro de la cuenca del ojo y es una esfera. Entonces, la forma de la esfera es lo que es más importante en todo eso. Pero bueno, ya con la explicación yo creo que es suficiente. Además, porque si no, no termino. Como mínimo tengo que empezar. Entonces vamos creando las formas. Mano a mano que voy creando las formas, también les voy diciendo cómo se llaman estas formas. Es importante aprender todos los elementos del ojo para después volver a olvidarnos de ellos. Pero una vez que estamos pintando un retrato, pues claro ya tener muy claro cuáles son los elementos que componen el ojo y ya no encontrarnos con un problema de no tener el ojo bien representado. Entonces, lo más importante es en esta fase crear pequeños segmentos. Entonces, no creo líneas curvas, pero creo pequeños segmentos. Voy buscando mis elementos en la hoja, ¿va? Y eso es lo más importante. Ahora que tengo la forma del ojo más o menos puesta, voy buscando lo que veo, ¿no? Veo que aquí arriba tengo el párpado superior. So once we put down all these elements on paper, and we do little segments, we don't do circle shapes, or better say, we create these shapes through little segments, and then eventually will be a circular shape after all. And we try to find where all the elements are, and we put them here in a very spontaneous way. All these can change. That's what's key in all this conversation we are having right now. All of this can change. So just try to figure out the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid with these little segments that we said. Put it on paper, and there we are. I'm going to abstract a little bit from the reality of the eye I'm painting, which is an image, a reference image, actually. And with these very light construction lines, I also place my main elements around the eye, which is the lower eyelid. That's pretty much this. And you can see we're doing a sphere in a way. Huh? It's happening. It's happening now. Not tomorrow. And so, well, all of this, the eyebrow, for example, can be just a little line for now. Then we can change it, right? But for now, it can be a little line. Here I see that I have some shadow, so I'll just put it there. And you can use a mirror and you can be doing your own eye if you want. You don't have to look in the internet for an eye. Also, what you can do when you look for a reference picture in internet, for example, it can be a portrait and you can just zoom in into the eye. Because if you look for eyes in Google, you might not find the right one you like. But honestly, when we paint with a model, all of this exceedingly detailed information, it's lost because we don't see it, right? We don't see an image like a picture, like a photograph. Photography gives us so many details, so much information, and then the bare eye gives us, in a way, more information, but less detail in a way. And so we're much more aware of what an eye is about, but we don't lose time into smaller details that really don't mean anything. So what we can do now is to go from the small brush. Now we go to the big brush, right? Why? Small brush gives me detail. Big brush gives me the general mass, the general form. So, vamos desde el pincel chiquito ahora al pincel grande. ¿Por qué? Porque el pincel grande me da la forma general del ojo. Y entonces con eso vamos buscando esas formas generales. Nos quedamos en monocromáticos y nos quedamos con el ocre. ¿Por qué el ocre? El ocre es el color de la piel en general. Hay mucho que hablar sobre el color de la piel, los tonos de la piel. Y efectivamente, pues... el papel es de 300 gramos. ¿Por qué? Porque es mucho más estable, ¿no? Y es 100% algodón. Si quieren utilizar un papel que sea útil y que no les cree problemas, gastar un poco más y comprar un papel de algodón y comprarlo de 300 gramos, no de 185, porque pues, es más estable. Y ahora vamos pintando un poquito las formas generales. ¿Qué es este proceso? Pues es un proceso que me permite ver lo general. Ah, mira, lo que estoy usando ahora es un ocre de la marca Rublev y se llama Ambrogio Yellow Earth. Ambrogio Yellow Earth es el nombre que tiene esta marca. Es una marca muy buena que utiliza pigmentos naturales y también tiene como una serie histórica y fundamentalmente no utilizan aditivos. Entonces la acuarela que es nada más una goma arábica en la que está suspendido un pigmento. En este caso, pues, un pigmento rojo, en este caso es un cobalto. Entonces, vamos viendo un poquito cómo crear estos tonos más claros y más oscuros. Y aquí vamos para abajo, donde me va un poco más oscuro toda esta parte, que de hecho corresponde a la zona de la nariz y aquí la zona de la ceja, ¿no? Aquí me quedó muy clarito, porque es casi blanco de papel. En acuarela el blanco no existe, el blanco es nuestro propio papel, ¿ok? Entonces, si tuviéramos un papel de un color, pues utilizaríamos el blanco, pero la verdad ni siquiera sería un blanco de acuarela, sería un blanco de wash. Lo que usamos ahora es el blanco del papel. Entonces, la transparencia de la carga del pincel es la cantidad de agua que ponemos. Más agua ponemos, más transparente es. Entonces, donde yo voy a dejar casi blanco del papel, pues pondré mucha agua, ¿verdad? O más bien poco pigmento, porque el equilibrio es entre agua y pigmento. Ahí me gustaría quedarme. Entonces, lo que estoy haciendo es crear la forma. Poco a poco se va creando esta forma y en base a esta forma que estoy creando, ¿está viendo quemado? So something happened with the camera. I need to switch and hopefully it's gonna go back to its own. Hello everybody. Let me see if it's gonna focus. I think I need to just, and sorry for this little technical problem, but because this camera has an out. Okay, perfect. So it focused itself. So I think I put my arm in front of it. And crazy. So this is pretty much what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna do more than that. This is pretty much our general space that we're gonna work. And it helps us also creating, in a way, a sort of a composition itself, right? And now we can go more into details Um, so with a small brush, I can go into the details. Actually, I'm going to go through a medium brush phase first. I'm going to mix here a little bit of blue. It's going to be, well, any blue you guys have. It doesn't matter really. You know, in this case, it's cerulean blue. And a little bit of a alizarin crimson, which is the red I use. So I can get, you know, a nice, and a little bit of burnt sienna to create sort of a mute tone, and which I'm going to apply on the shadow area. So voy mezclando azul, alizarina y un poco de pardo, no, perdón, de sienna tostada, para ir trabajando la zona de sombra, que es esta. Y poco a poco vamos creando, pues poniendo la base para lo que va a ser nuestra composición general, ya entrando más en el detalle, ¿no? Y aquí, como pueden ver, pues estoy entrando en las zonas más oscuras y las estoy trabajando de forma muy sencilla, muy ligera, sin exagerar con el valor tonal y con lo que es como un tono bastante bueno, con un croma muy bajo. Es muy poco color. Son unos morados que funcionan muy bien porque son colores complementarios a los amarillos. Entonces, siendo este morado el complementario al ocre, ¿no? Y eso lo vamos usando siempre en el acuarela para crear este tipo de contrastes. Y ahora pues puedo ir trabajando, por ejemplo, esta zona, que la veo más en la sombra, lo puedes ir difuminando en una zona que ya estaba activa y estaba todavía húmeda, ¿no? Entonces, esa es una técnica que se llama húmedo sobre húmedo. This is a wet on wet technique. So, what I did with the ochre was to create, you know, a lower layer, which is still wet, and it helps me to mix colors in a very spontaneous and unpredictable way. So this is what's nice, you know, about watercolors. You know, that you never know what you're gonna end up with. Which brings me to the concept of now I'm gonna use like a smaller brush and add more color. The process is something really important when we paint with watercolors. So we need to enjoy the process. If we enjoy the process, we get a great final result. If all we care about is the final result, we're going to have a terrible process and we're going to have a mediocre watercolor. It's going to look very stiff. It's not going to look alive. Which is, you know, the whole purpose of painting with watercolors is like to have a fresh look to it. And otherwise we will paint with oils probably, which is a very different approach in a way. While I paint, I observe my main image, and I keep moving things because I start to see where things really are. Isn't it happening to you as well? If it's happening to you as well, then you're definitely doing it right. If you think that the first lines you put down are the right ones, you're mistaken, because it's impossible to get it like that, you know? Just like you need to observe something in order to be able to put it on paper, and to really observe something, especially an eye that is so complex in its shape and its quantity of information, you really need a good time, a lot of time, at least half an hour. So don't rush. Do it I recommend to do it the way I do it. Slowly getting there. Slowly getting there means don't rush, go with lighter layers first, and then start adding more and more details. And more details means also more pigment. I like to use this alizarin red around the upper eyelid because it's much closer to reality than other colors in terms of membranes. So around the eyes, there's a lot of blood. So all these elements create like a reddish color in the eye area, especially the tear duct and the lower eyelid. The lower eyelid is normally thick, so we need to give it thickness, and then we can go much lighter as we approach the iris. So while I paint along, I'm talking about all the elements of the eye, that compose the eye, and the upper eyelid is normally bigger than the lower eyelid. So el párpado superior es normalmente más grande que el párpado inferior. El párpado inferior entra en el párpado superior de esa forma. Entonces el párpado superior lo va como abrazando. Y aquí pues puedo poner ya más color. Todo lo que he puesto abajo sigue ahí. Y es mi estructura. Entonces, sí lo puedo ir cambiando, obviamente lo iré cambiando, porque quiero ser fiel a lo que observo, pero al mismo tiempo es como un cojín que me ayuda a estar más tranquilo y a ir pintando sin tan estrés, ¿no? Porque las cosas vienen gracias a este proceso. Ahora, el ojo es entre el verde y el azul. Entonces, optaré por el verde y voy a quedar aquí en esta zona con más blanco del papel. Y ahora estamos pintando el iris. Esto se puede mezclar entre amarillo y azul, obviamente, y crearlo. Yo utilicé un sap green. I used the sap green to do this iris. It's a little big, but pretty much we're going that way. And so now we can just add the pupil, right? The pupil is very dark, and I will use sepia for it. The process is going to be a process of adding and taking out, So we'll do it really fast, but, it's adding and taking. And now that I have this in place, I can start working on the sclera. The sclera is the white of the eye. Thing is, the white of the eye is never white. It's more of a grayish color. So to create a gray, I use green and red. Touch of blue, maybe. So I can have a neutral gray. I talk about this in my course a lot. And the bottom part of the sclera, I leave it sort of light. And then this other corner, I go stronger with the grays. And the upper part is also a much darker gray. Look, I think I found it. Mixing colors, it's fun. But I also have a glare over here, which is really strong. So I'm gonna try to leave it as it is now, like white of the paper. Just add some of the gray up here, and then down on this corner. this other corner. So we're getting pretty much closer to the final result. Final result being a few touches. We're going to wait for this to dry a little bit. And what I like to do around this pupil is to add some ochre, yellow ochre, because that's what normally is, you know, there's the first circle around the pupil is normally of that color. And then I can also just do these little imperfections, add these little different graduations. And now I can add, you know, a stronger border, which I will do with sepia. It doesn't matter if it's completely wet or not, you know. And I think the upper part will probably be, you know, a lighter sepia over here. And this is starting to create this texture of the eyeball, which is basically very similar to glass. So this is what I want to do. With a flat brush, my favorite one is this, you know, very inexpensive, and it's a synthetic flat brush. I can take off some of the pigment. How do I take off pigment? Well, with water, you know, and no pigment in it. I can take off some of the pigment in the lower part of the sclera, just like that, and a little bit here. So we're adding and taking off, and this is a really good technique when when we talk about eyes. I'm going to take off a little bit up here too. When we talk about eye, the most realistic effect is to add and take some of it off. I create more skin tone with ochre and alizarin crimson, and I add some of it here, this area as well. So it's time now to go darker, a little bit of blue. This gives me like sort of a, you know, I could use a smaller brush here. So what does a smaller brush do in this case? When, you know, it's basically more pigment and less water, because the other one I chugged with a lot of water. If we load a brush with a lot of water, you know, we might want to either take some of the water off or just get a smaller one with more pigment, just go in it. And this is creating the shape within the general overall shape. And then with this flat brush that we used before, I can go and smear a little bit of the paint here and there so that it's more realistic, creates sort of a texture in a way. I can get rid of my vertical line if I wanted to. And I can be a little bit more smooth in this area. These edges are not that harsh, you know, that strong. I clean my brush and I add some of the skin tone here on the upper eyelid, especially in these areas that are going to give me, like, you know, the circular shape of it, because we're creating an overall shape that is the eyeball, right? So we need to be on that focus, really focused on that. So darker on this corner and darker on this other corner will definitely do. It's time to define a little bit more. We can define more here. There. Zero that. And we can add a little bit of red in this area. And it's okay if it's a red with some other color within it. It's fine. This eye I'm painting has nothing to do with the other two eyes. It's a different reference, as an image. So it would not look the same because it's just a different reference I'm using. I'm gonna try to be faster in this phase, adding some details over here. The eyebrows don't have to be that detailed. If we add too much detail, we lose the realistic approach to it. And then some general overall colors. We have 10 minutes left. I think we can do it. What do you guys think? I mean, we're pretty much there. I mean, we need to add some more color here and there, some more shadows here and there. So I can add some more shadow in this area. And just let it go. Yeah, there you are. You know, let's do some magic like that. Lower eyelid still needs a little bit of work. And I mean, la parte inferior del párpado necesita un poco más de trabajo. Entonces voy a crear un poquito más de color. Esto lo ideal hubiera sido crear mucho más color, pero como pueden ver, pues yo pinto un poco creándome situaciones, ¿no? No quiero tener unos colores predeterminados. Me gusta ir improvisando y cambiando cada vez. Lo cual me ha creado muchos problemas en mi trabajo, pero también me ha creado siempre mucha espontaneidad en mis resultados finales. Todo por no tener demasiado miedo o por no tener que hacer siempre todo igual. Y que al final es un bloqueo completo eso, ¿no? O sea, tener que cada vez hacerlo de la misma forma puede crear cierto estrés y también cierto bloqueo. Voy añadiendo mucho más de esa mezcla entre ocre y rojo para darle unos tonos más realistas, más realísticos. No sé cómo se dice. ¿Cómo se dice? Y aquí voy quitando un poquito. O sea, con este pincel plano, fundamentalmente, puedo hacer varias cosas. Puedo ir quitando y puedo ir también creando situaciones como más difuminadas de lo que son mis transiciones, ¿no? Cuando hablo de edges, hablo de transiciones, ¿no? En inglés se dice edges y aquí transiciones. Un poquito más de detalle, yo creo que en esta parte sería bonito. Y esto le da también un poco de textura, un poco de color en esta parte. El rojo en esta parte es muy importante. Hemos dicho que en el retrato hay algunos puntos que tienen más sangre, ¿no? Entonces, más capilares. Y eso lo he dicho en inglés, pero bueno, yo creo que un poco se ha entendido, ¿no? Espero que sí. De estos capilares, estas zonas con más capilares son las zonas que nos crean mucho más, pues donde utilizamos mucho más rojo, porque hay más terminaciones sanguíneas. Entonces, eso, pues yo creo que me quedo aquí a nivel de detalle. Se podría detallar mucho más. De hecho, si queremos estar aquí toda la mañana, pues podría, bueno, en mi caso mañana. En España ya es hora de la cervecita, de la cañita, ¿verdad? Yo estoy tomando café. De hecho, tengo una gana de más café, pero... Aquí lo que es importante es dejar algo de blanco en el borde del párpado inferior. Le da mucha vida. Y un poquito de rojo lo puedo añadir también a mi esclerótica, ¿eh? Porque... Ahora voy con el pardo Van Dyke o con cualquier pardo para darle un poquito más de detalle, ¿no? Cualquier pardo puede funcionar. En mi caso, yo uso también un French Raw Amber o puede ser Raw Amber en general, o sea, sombra. En este caso, sombra francesa. Uso mucho también el Pardo Van Dyke. Se mezcla muy bien con la lisarina, que da un muy buen efecto. Y es una sombra que puede llegar a tener valores tonales muy, muy oscuros. No hemos hablado mucho del concepto de valor tonal, pero me imagino que la mayoría de ustedes entienden cuando hablo de valor tonal, que pues, la referencia es hacia las zonas más oscuras, las zonas más claras de mi representación. Entonces, la ceja, ¿se dice ceja? Pues no la voy definiendo mucho. También un poquito de morado podría funcionar bien en esta zona. Y el morado, de hecho, me gusta mucho, siendo complementario del ocre, utilizarlo cuando pintamos el ojo morado, también porque tiene alizarina al final de adentro, ¿no? Y ahora con este morado muy oscuro podría también estar trabajando la parte más oscura del párpado superior. Como pueden ver, todo viene paso a paso, ¿eh? No es que yo lo estoy haciendo a la primera, ¿no? Porque no va a salir. Son capas las que estamos usando y todas estas capas poco a poco nos llevan a más definición y a más detalle. So we don't want to reach a level of detail that is super high detail at the beginning. We're getting there slowly. And meaning slowly. When I say slowly, it's slowly. So slowly we get there. To paint an eye in a portrait is probably way faster than this because we need to only focus on what we see. But when we do sort of an anatomic exercise like this one, we really want to enter into all these little details, understand them, and then sort of erase them from our memory. In a way, they're going to be there. They're always going to be there. So next time we paint an eye, we have this as a foundation to our knowledge, but in a way, it's not going to be. We don't want it to be, an enemy. So we don't want to get all this level of detail when we paint an eye next time, especially in a portrait. We want to have it as knowledge. But then when we paint a portrait, this eye is going to be lights and shadows, nothing else. We're going to have to focus on that. And I do explain this very well in the demonstration that I do in the course, which is a full demonstration of a portrait from start to finish. There's a lot more in the class. 17 lessons, but we do paint a skull, we do paint a sphere first, and we understand these concepts of lights and shadows. And so then when we get to the portrait itself, we sort of simplify all these elements that we have observed today so that we can just add what's needed. I think it's a good time now probably to see some questions appearing up there. Also to give some of my social references, social medias. If you're painting with me right now and you want to paint along later, because you can go back to Domestika Live page and see it again. And paint along. What are the best exercises to practice watercolor painting? I would say first paint a sphere. It doesn't have to be a sphere if you don't have a sphere, it can be an egg. That way you're gonna understand how to load the brush, how to see light and shadows, and all that is in between, mid-tones especially. So definitely the first exercise I would recommend to any student is to paint an egg. An egg because we have eggs in our fridge all the time, or a sphere, If you do a perfect sphere in watercolor, you're probably ready for more. I mean, we can add more detail. We can go on forever if you want. But I think I'm gonna just probably focus now on the iris. These aspects, we want to do to create this glare and this like glass texture to it. We can do it now. How? Well, we have a main reflection in this upper area, and then I can also take off some of the paint in this area. This is just water on a flat synthetic brush. Just a little bit of water. It doesn't have to be dripping. It's just slightly humid. And as you can see, I can erase some of the pigment, and it's now, a reflection. What this does is that it basically creates the illusion of glass, sclera, basically, which is the substance of the eye, the white of the eye. So I think the pupil is a little bigger, so I'm going to make it slightly bigger and probably darker, but I think I'm going to stay there. It's definitely darker here with some blue. And so when you do the outer ring of the iris, just don't do a full ring. Just keep breaking it. And the upper part has a shadow that is projected by the upper lid and eyelid, right? So the upper eyelid projects just shadow all over here and in the sclerotic as well, right? So we need to add this sort of optical gray, which in this case I'm going to do it slightly darker. So this is just like, the final touches that allow me to create a more spheric illusion of the eyeball. And some of the red might enter in the realm, but maybe with a small brush. Some of this red can go in and just, do the little bit cup. Yeah, there you are. You can do just little small veins within the sclera itself. This is a fun exercise. You need to do it anytime you have some free time. Just play with it. So much fun. And you don't have to add too much detail. It's fine as it is. All right. Maybe it needs to be a little darker in this area. I'm just gonna work this area a little more. Is it okay to show it like up close? If you want, I can do it again. So you've seen all the process, and now you can see from up close that while I was doing all this process, I was preserving some white of the paper. And yes, I was trying to be, focused. He intentado estar enfocado en lo que estaba haciendo, pero la verdad, entre que estaba hablando en dos idiomas y todo lo demás, pues, un poco bueno. Pero lo que vamos haciendo es la forma general. Forma general primero, detalle después. Todo ese proceso lo están viendo ahora en vivo. Y puede ser que también haya un par de pestañas, ¿no? Por aquí y por allá. Pero estas pestañas no tienen que ser duras. Tienen que ser muy ligeras, muy sugeridas. Ya con eso. Si hacemos pestañas muy duras y cejas muy duras, este ejercicio se transforma en algo un poco cheesy, ¿no? O sea, no es realista. El realismo a veces es quitar detalle. So I was saying that the most realistic approach, although it might seem sort of contradictory, um, is just taking off detail, you know? Taking off detail allow us to be more realistic. It's an oxymoron, you say? I don't know how you say that in English. Well, it's like, it's a contradiction, but it's exactly what we need to do. So now I could just go on and refine more everything, but I guess I'm just going to leave it like that with maybe a little bit of a wash over there and over here, just to give a more three-dimensional aspect to it. All right, so I got closer and we can answer more questions. Maybe a little bit of brown in the iris, because as you can see, everything else it's very interesting, but the iris is sort of dull. And so what I can do is just to add a little bit more of interesting details here and there, and get a lot more realistic green as well. Okay, so now you can see what we focused on was the overall shape. We got into the details. We also, remember, we did a lower eyelid with some thickness to it, rendering it also with this white of the paper. Some white of the paper here where we have some glare of the skin being more wet. And especially here in the sclerotic, you know, so, or sclera, I think it's called sclera in English. And here we can do a little bit more detail. I mean, we can go on forever, like literally. So have fun, keep doing it, and ask me any question you want, because now is the time to do so. I don't see any question myself because how do you paint with watercolors without ruining or crumbling the paper? Good paper helps. This is cotton paper. It has two characteristics. It lasts forever. Basically, we have drawing from Leonardo that are on cotton paper, and they're we're able to see them today, 500, more than 500 years later, right? Second, if you don't have cotton paper, anyway, get a pulp paper that is at least, 300 grams. That helps a lot to have a paper that is stable. And what I also recommend is not to pass over the same area too many times. If you pass over the same area too many times, or if you pass over an area that is too wet with a rough brush, just like this, for example, it's a little harsh, you will probably take some of the pulp off the paper. With a harsh 300 grams, 140 pound paper, you won't have any problem. And if you do, then it means that you're like a butcher. ¿Cómo eliges los colores que tienes que utilizar? ¿Tienes alguna paleta de colores favoritas? Por supuesto, esa es una muy buena pregunta. Mira, aquí se ve bien la marca de esos colores que yo estoy utilizando. Se llaman Rublev. Y en su página web van a tener una paleta de colores para Michele Bayona, o sea, como autógrafa. So what kind of colors do I use, and do I have a color palette that I prefer? Yes, I do, and this brand will have it with my name, and it's like, my palette. They make it with the colors that I'm actually using, which are these ones. And if you don't want to use this, you can use Cotman, for example. Here I have some, which is much more commercial. What I like to do is also to buy from people who really care about making colors or making paper. you know. So we actually went to Rublev Natural Pigments lately, and they're really nice colors. What I also recommend is for the skin tones, use a lot of ochres and reds, some burnt sienna, and any kind of amber. You know, it can be Van Dyke. Brown Van Dyke is something I really use a lot. It can be French raw amber. You can mix it with some black, which is basically what Van Dyke brown is. You know, it's amber with black. Another question. Came out okay, right? I mean, with more time, it would have been so much more detailed, like you see over here. How to properly blend. I used to use flat brushes. I like to use flat brushes to blend colors together. And as you can see here, I've blended especially the upper eyelid using this with no color. My colors were already on paper, and this is a really good paper because it's cotton paper. So just a humid flat brush. You take colors off. You can blend, and you can also take off excess of pigment. I like this a lot. Then with a white, clean paper towel, you can take off excess. So I blend with this, which is called, it's really a wash. And I also do exercises of gradient washes. So you need to exercise on solid washes and gradient washes in order to understand how to blend colors together. ¿Qué paletas recomienda para una piel afro? This is a really good question, and I think I do have an example that I showed before. Right? What I like to when we want to do, you know, a dark skin tone, cuando queremos hacer un tono de piel oscuro, se utiliza mucho más el amber, ¿no? La sombra natural. Yo uso mucho el Pardo Van Dyke y muchísimo siena tostada. Ocre e alizarina. Aunque la proporción de ocre y siena tostada cambia. Con una piel clara es mucho más ocre, con una piel oscura es mucho menos ocre y muchísimo más siena tostada y sombra natural. O me gusta mucho el Pardo Van Dyke porque llega a valores tonales muy oscuros, pero también es muy transparente y se ve muy bien en tonos muy claros. Y aquí puedes ver que aquí puse bastante alizarina y aquí bastante ocre. Aquí también hay ocre. Y todo eso que ves es una mezcla entre sombra natural y siena tostada. Aquí vuelve la alizarina y aquí pues hay también sepia. En el cabello, que es afro, justo porque hiciste eso, pues puedes ver que hay sobre todo sombra natural y sepia y algo del fondo. Cuando nosotros pintamos el cabello siempre entramos con el fondo adentro de la composición. Este fondo que es un violeta, es un viola un poco grisáceo, pues entra en el cabello. Es muy importante pintar el cabello junto con el fondo. ¿Qué paleta? Okay. I'm ready for another. I don't know. Podemos despedir cuando quieras. Okay, muy bien. So here we are. If you have more questions, please go ahead and ask them. I will try to answer to them later. I hope you enjoyed the process. Hope you liked the exercise. You can watch it again anytime in Domestika Live. I don't know if there's a link that we can add or if it has already happened. This is available forever. You just need to watch it and paint along with me. Now you know pretty much the color I use, the pens, the brushes I use, and you can just go back to it and paint along. Change your reference picture. Try to do the same with the person in front of you. You will see that it's less details than the picture reference and much more realistic, the final result. And that's pretty much it. Hope you had a good time. I had a good time too. Espero que lo hayan disfrutado mucho. Lo pueden volver a ver en Domestika Live. Este se queda como también en YouTube. Y bueno, pues si les ha gustado, compártanlo con sus amigos. Y cuando lo quieren pues postear, cualquier dibujo que quieran postear, o en acuarela que quieran postear, pues pongan de este ejercicio del ojo, pues pongan el gato Michele Bayona Domestika. So you can also post this on Instagram or Facebook with the hashtag Michele Bayona Domestika, and I can see your work and, you know, maybe do a little, give a little feedback. And that's pretty much it. I hope you had a good time, and I'll see you soon. ¡Viva el arte!
La idea es como algo muy frágil.
Se me fue la hebra.
I'm going to show you some examples. This is what we've got behind me.
¿Qué más preguntas tengo por aquí? ¿Cómo descubriste que lo tuyo era